Hare Krishna. Let us understand Bhagavad Gita as it is, written by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Bhagavad Gita has 18 chapters. So let us understand these chapters section by section. Before we begin the discussion, let us offer our prayers to our spiritual master, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada and Supreme Lord Shri Krishna. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Today we will be understanding the first section of the 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. 15th chapter is entitled The Yoga of the Supreme Person. Section 1 is from Shloka number 1 to Shloka number 11. This section is entitled The Process of Becoming Free from Material Entanglement. So let us understand this section. Lord Krishna has described many methods of becoming free from this material entanglement, and in this section of this chapter, Krishna compares this material entanglement to a banyan tree and how the living being is entangled in this material world by performing various fruitive activities, and he also teaches the process of becoming free from the material entanglement and returning back to the spiritual world. So let us understand this section. So Lord Krishna says, Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Urdhvamulam Madashakam Ashvatham Prahuravyayam Chandansi Yasya Parnani Yastam Vedasa Vedavit. The Blessed Lord said, there is a banyan tree which has its roots upward and its branches down, and whose leaves are the Vedic hymns. One who knows this tree is the knower of the Vedas. Adhashchodham prasritastasya shakha guna pravruddha vishaya pravala Adhascha mulanyanu karmanubandhini manushya loke. The branches of this tree extend downward and upward, nourished by the three modes of material nature. The twigs are the objects of the senses. This tree also has roots going down, and these are bound to the fruitive actions of human society. Na rupam asyeha tathopalabhyate nanto na chadir na cha sampratishta ashvathamenam suvirodhamulam asangashastrena dridhena chitva tatah padam tat parimargitavyam yasmin gata na nivartanti bhuyaha Tameva chadyam purusham prapadye yatah pravritti prasrita purani. The real form of this tree cannot be perceived in this world. No one can understand where it ends, where it begins, or where its foundation is. But with determination, one must cut down this tree with the weapon of detachment. So doing, one must seek that place from which, having once gone, one never returns. and there surrender to that Supreme Personality of Godhead, from whom everything has begun and in whom everything is abiding since time immemorial. So in these 4 shlokas, Krishna has described how the material entanglement is compared to a banyan tree which is inverted. So this tree of material entanglement has its root beginning from Brahmaloka, where Lord Brahma, the first living being of this material creation, lives, and from him various other planetary systems are created and different living beings dwell in different planetary systems. And the leaves of this tree is compared to Vedic hymns, which teaches living beings how to make progress in one's own life and how to even satisfy one's own material desires. The living beings, especially in human form of life, they perform various fruitive activities and sometimes pious activities also, as prescribed in the Vedas. So by performing pious activities, human beings, they elevate to heavenly planets, and after enjoying in the heavenly planets, when their pious credits are over, they again come down to earthly planets. In this way, a living being is entangled in this material world, and this material world is compared to a huge banyan tree with roots. Main root is in the Brahmaloka, but there are other secondary roots which are spread everywhere. And the living being, he wanders from one branch to another by taking up different material bodies according to one's own desires to enjoy. In this way, a living being becomes entangled in this material world. But an intelligent person should, especially in human form of life, when a living being gets a human body, he has completely developed senses, mind and intelligence. So with the help of this body, one should understand this material world, which is compared to a huge banyan tree with no beginning and no end, and one should understand how to get out of this material world. This whole material world is compared to an inverted tree. We don't find a tree which is inverted in this material world, but when we go to a reservoir of water, say a lake, on the bank of a lake, there may be many trees growing, and the reflection of the tree we can see on the lake, which is inverted. So this material world is a reflection of the spiritual world. Whatever we see in this material world, we have family, father, mother, brother, sister, we have so many varieties of relationships, and we have desires to enjoy in different ways. Actually, all these desires and relationships, what we see in this material world, they're all originally there in the spiritual world in its real form, which is full of knowledge and bliss. But because of absence of Krishna consciousness, when a living being wants to enjoy himself, then it becomes material, it becomes painful, and it becomes entangling. The whole process of material enjoyment here, every living being wants to be the center of attraction, he wants to be the enjoyer himself. Because of this, he gets entangled in various fruitive activities. So Vedas gives knowledge to mankind to understand the reality. The whole reality is the Supreme Lord Krishna. He is the root cause of everything, and everything belongs to him. Every living being belongs to him, and the whole creation is made for his own enjoyment, and we all can enjoy with Krishna in various loving relationships. So one has to understand the whole concept, and Krishna teaches this whole thing through the Vedas. So one should take advantage of the Vedic literatures, understand the whole existence, understand the root cause of everything, understand who am I, understand what is my relationship in this whole creation, and then connect with the Supreme Lord in our original loving relationship and detach from this material world. Unless we develop attachment to Krishna, one cannot detach from this material world. Therefore, in Bhagavad Gita, many processes of spiritual elevation and many processes of yoga system was explained by Krishna. the best process of becoming free from this material entanglement, which was even discussed in the 13th chapter, is by performing pure devotion to Krishna. When we perform devotional service to Krishna, develop our loving relationships with Krishna, we can become free from the material modes of nature which forces one to act in a particular way. So one can become free from the material influence and return back to the spiritual world. So detachment from this material world and attachment to Krishna both happens parallelly when we practice the principles of Bhakti Yoga, beginning from hearing and chanting Krishna's holy names, Krishna's pastimes, and performing devotional service under the guidance of a pure devotee, associating with devotees. In that way, when we follow the principles of Bhakti Yoga, it becomes easy for a human being to develop his relationship with Krishna and then cut down the attachment to this material entanglement and develop attachment to Krishna. Both has to happen parallelly. So that is being explained here in this section. So Krishna further now describes how to become detached from this material world and cut down the attraction to this material entanglement. So Krishna says, Nirmana moha jita sanga dosha adhyatma nitya vinivritta kama dvandvair vimukta sukha dukkha sangyer gacchantya mudha padam avyayam tat. One who is free from illusion, false prestige and false association, who understands the eternal, who is done with material lust and is freed from the duality of happiness and distress, and who knows how to surrender unto the Supreme Person, attains to that eternal kingdom. So here Krishna has listed certain qualities which are essential to enter into the eternal kingdom of the Supreme Lord. So Krishna is telling, Nirmana moha jita sanga dosha. One has to be nirmana, means one should not desire to be respected by anyone as a great person. In this material world, as I was explaining, everyone wants to be the center of attraction. Everyone wants to be respected by others. Everyone wants everyone else to glorify him. So Krishna is telling, if we have to get out of this material world, first of all, we should give up the desire to lord over others. Here every living being wants to be the Supreme Person. He wants everyone to be under him, under his control. He wants to be the Lord. So one has to first of all give up this lording mentality and adopt the real mentality which a soul originally is. Soul is a servant of God. We are all servants of God. So we should always be in the mode of servant. We have to serve God. We have to serve the devotees of God. So in this mode when we live, then we can easily practice nirmana. We should always offer respects to every living being as part of God, and we should not desire any respect for ourselves. So Lord Chaitanya, he gives this instruction, Trinadapi sunichena taroriva sahishnuna. We have to be humbler than a blade of grass. Just like on a lawn, many people walk on the grass and the grass bows down. It doesn't protest. And taroriva sahishnuna, a tree, it stands in hot sun, in shivering cold, in rain, in storm. It tolerates all the various extreme weather conditions, and it provides all necessities for human beings. So in the same way, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is telling, Rinadapi sunichena taroriva sahishnuna amanina manadena kirtaniyaha sadaharihi. In order to always chant the holy names of Krishna and perform pure devotion to Krishna, first of all one has to be humbler than a blade of grass. Rinadapi sunichena, we have to be humble. Just like a blade of grass, you should always be humble, meek and humble. Do not expect any respect from others and offer all respects to others. And we should be more tolerant than a tree. Just like a tree tolerates all extreme conditions of weather, we should also tolerate various pains and distresses that we get in this material world, and go on chanting the holy names of the Lord, go on serving Krishna. So the first quality discussed here is Nirmana Moha Ajita. One has to conquer the illusion. We have to get out of the bodily concept of life. Because of the influence of material modes of nature, we forget our true identity as eternal parts of Krishna. So it is always good to be associated with devotees. In the association of devotees, there is always discussion about the true philosophy of life. The truth is, we are all eternal servants of Krishna, and we have to live in that particular way as devotees of Krishna. Always be engaged in discussing about Krishna, about how to serve Krishna, cooperate with each other and serve Krishna. In this way, when we live, then we can conquer the illusion which arises in our mind. And then Jita Sangha Dosha, we have to give up bad association and always be in the good association of devotees. In this way, we can lead a very safe and happy life while living in this material world, and we can be detached from this material existence and always be living our true life of Krishna consciousness. Adhyatma Nitya Vinivratta Kama. We should give up all desires for enjoying our senses, and we should develop a desire to serve Krishna's senses. We cannot be without desires. Desire is symptom of life. So we have to transfer our desire to please Krishna. Instead of pleasing our own mentally concocted ideas of sense enjoyment, we should know what is the desire of Krishna through a spiritual master, and then fulfill the desires of Krishna. Make our desires a desire to serve Krishna, a desire to please Krishna. In this way, we can become free from kama, all lusty desires. Dvandvar vimuktaha sukha dukkha sanyaya. We can be free from all dualities when we are engaged in pure devotion to Krishna. We should be neutral to the so-called pains and pleasures that we get because of our own past karmas. We should be neutral. And then Gachanti amudha padam avyayam tat. In this way, when we live a life of Krishna consciousness, we return to the eternal spiritual kingdom of the Supreme Lord. So this is the process of detachment which Krishna has described here. So further, Krishna says, Na tadbhasayate suryo na shashanko na pavakaha yad gatva na nivartante tadhama paramam mama. That abode of mine is not illumined by the sun or moon nor by electricity. One who reaches it never returns to this material world. So very nicely Krishna has described that the spiritual world in which the Supreme Lord resides, Natad bhasayate suryo na shashanko na pavaka. There neither sun illuminates nor moon nor electricity. Here in this material world, we require sunlight, we require moonlight, we require electricity to light up our houses and our rooms. But in the spiritual world, every spiritual world is self-effulgent. The effulgence of Krishna's body is called Brahma Jyoti, that is spread everywhere. And in Brahma Jyoti there are innumerable spiritual planets called Vaikuntha Lokas. And the supreme spiritual planet is called Goloka, where Lord Krishna himself resides. And in Vaikuntha Lokas, Lord Krishna resides in various Narayana forms. And Srimati Radharani, she expands herself into various Lakshmi forms, and she serves Narayana in various Vaikuntha Lokas. Lord Krishna resides in Goloka Vrindavana with various devotees who serve him in various loving relationships. So that is being given. The brief description of that spiritual world is being given here by Lord Krishna. Once we enter into that spiritual abode of Krishna or Vaikuntha Lokas, Yadgatva na nivartante, we will not return to this material world. Tadhama paramam mama. So Krishna is telling, that is my supreme spiritual abode. So by this one should take the hint of the goal of life that we should have. When we have a place which is eternal, full of bliss and full of knowledge and full of happiness, we should be very, very inspired to achieve that. And by Bhakti Yoga, it is very, very easily possible to enter into that spiritual abode of Krishna. Then further, Krishna is now describing how the living beings are entangled in this material world. Krishna says, Mamaivamsho jiva loke jiva bhutas sanatanaha manashashtanindriyani prakritisthani karshati. The living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with the 6 senses, which include the mind. So the living beings who are there in this material world are all parts of Krishna. Krishna has his own personal expansions called Vishnu Tattva, and he is having his separated expansions called the Jiva Tattva. So Vishnu Tattva are the Supreme Lord himself who exists in the spiritual world in various forms. That is his personal expansion, and they are equal to the Supreme Lord Krishna himself in all respects. But the living beings, they are tiny parts of Krishna. They are also one in quality. Krishna is Satchidananda. The parts of Krishna, the Jivas, they are also Satchidananda. But in quantity, the living beings, the Jivas, are very, very tiny. The Supreme Lord is unlimited. So in quantity there is a difference. And also the Supreme Lord is God. He is the Supreme Person. He is the owner of everything. And the Jivas are his eternal servants. Their constitution is to always render loving service to Krishna in a loving relationship. That is the original nature of a living being. But those living beings who have misused their free will, they are in this material world to enjoy unnaturally. Natural position of a jiva is to always be loving Krishna and serving Krishna. But those jivas wanted to enjoy without loving Krishna, without serving Krishna. They are conditioned in this material world with a material body and a subtle body made of mind, intelligence and false egos. So because of this conditioning in this material body, living beings undergo hard struggle for existence, because life in this material world is full of pain. Material body itself keeps changing and it undergoes various changes like birth, death, old age and disease, which are all very, very miserable. It is a painful experience for every living being. And apart from these 4 miseries, there are many other miseries one experiences because of the material nature's influence, like severe heat, severe cold, earthquakes, floods, and miseries because of other living beings are disturbed by other living beings. So in this way, we face various troubles in this material world. So that is what Krishna is describing here, that living beings are originally his parts, but they are all struggling in this material world with the mind. Mind is the root cause of all our problems. In our mind, when we generate some desires and work for it, it gives pain. Unless we fix our mind on Krishna and serve Krishna, we will always be suffering. So the mind is the cause of our entanglement. Mind is the cause of our liberation. So mind absorbed in serving Krishna is cause of our happiness and liberation. Mind absorbed in thoughts of sense enjoyment and working for achieving those sense objects is cause of our suffering. So therefore mind is specifically mentioned here by Krishna. So further Krishna says, Shariram yadavapnoti achapyutkramati ishvaraha grihitvaitani samyati vayur gandhani vashayat. The living entity in the material world carries different conceptions of life from one body to another, as the air carries aromas. So as I was explaining, mind is the root cause of our conditioning in this material world. So in the mind we generate various ideas of sense enjoyment, and when we develop these ideas in our mind, the subtle body carries the soul from one body to another according to the desires which are there in the mind. So if one develops a mentality of a cat, he enters into a cat's body and lives like a cat for one full life. If a man develops a desire to enjoy like a dog, he will enter into a dog's body. If a man develops a desire to fly like a bird, he will be provided a bird's body. In this way, every living being is in different species of life. That's because that living being wanted to enjoy in that way. So therefore, the soul is carried from one body to another and is provided senses according to the desires he develops in the subtle body. So that is nicely described here. Shrotram chakshusparshanam cha rasanam ghranam cha adhishtaya manaschayam vishayanupasevate. The living entity, thus taking another gross body, obtains a certain type of ear, tongue and nose and sense of touch, which are grouped about the mind. He thus enjoys a particular set of sense objects. So, according to the desires one develops in the mind, one is provided a suitable set of senses: eyes, nose, tongue, ears. So, the body is given according to the desires he has developed in the mind. So, if a person develops a desire to enjoy like a dog in his mind, he will be provided a dog's body to enjoy like a dog for the whole life. If a person wants to eat meat and enjoy like a tiger, he will be provided a tiger's body and is given a certain type of mouth with teeth to cut the flesh into pieces, and then he is provided with the sharp nails to tear the body of an animal. So in that way, according to one's own desires which are developed in the mind, a particular set of working senses and knowledge acquiring senses are provided, and the living being is made to enjoy or suffer the experience in that material body. So in this way, the living being wanders in this material world. So Krishna says, Utkramantam sthitam vapi bhunjanam va gunanvitam vimudhananu pashyanti jnana chakshushaha. The foolish cannot understand how a living being can quit his body, nor can they understand what sort of body he enjoys under the spell of the modes of nature. But one whose eyes are trained in knowledge can see all this. So here we can see the importance of acquiring knowledge. If we understand the whole concept of life as described by Lord Krishna himself, who is the creator of everything, we can understand how a living being is wandering in this material world from one body to another, trying to fulfill his desires, and is always frustrated and is always unhappy. Only by performing devotional service one can become free from all these sufferings. So a person in knowledge can understand the whole thing and he can get out of this material entanglement. On the other hand, those who try to understand life with their own limited senses and mind, they will not be able to understand the whole picture and they will continue to remain in this material entanglement. So further Krishna says, Yatanto yoginaschainam pashyantyatmanyavasthitam yatanto apyakrita atmano nainam pashyantya chetasaha. The endeavoring transcendentalist who is situated in self-realization can see all this clearly, but those who are not situated in self-realization cannot see what is taking place, though they may try to. So, those who are trying to achieve self-realization as directed by Krishna, as instructed by Krishna, they can see how living beings are entangled in this material world, and they can even help other living beings by teaching them the whole concept of Krishna consciousness. Those who don't know who is God, who is Krishna, what is this material world, what are the living beings, they remain entangled because they don't have any knowledge about life. They think that I am this body and enjoying bodily senses is the aim of life, and they work hard to achieve money to purchase all the sense objects to enjoy sense gratification. So such living beings will be entangled in this material world and they will be suffering in this material world. Only a person who is in true knowledge, a devotee of Krishna, he is in true knowledge of everything. So he understands everything clearly. On the other hand, there are spiritualists who are impersonalists who think that God is impersonal, we are also God, and somehow we are entangled in this material body. Once we become liberated from this material body by performing certain activities, certain tapasyas, we will also merge in God. So those people who have this kind of impersonal understanding, they will never be able to get liberated from this material world. Maximum they may enter into Brahma Jyoti, but because Brahma Jyoti is not a permanent place for a living being to stay, because living being is full of desires, it wants to enjoy in different varieties of ways. Achieving Brahma Jyoti is not complete perfection of life. Entering into the spiritual world and having a loving relationship with Krishna and serving Krishna, that is the complete perfection of a living being. So unless we achieve that complete perfection, a living being cannot sit quietly in Brahma Jyoti. So he will again fall down into this material world to perform activities, because without activity a living being cannot sit quietly. So therefore, a devotee who knows things clearly, that God is a person, we are all individuals, we are also persons, we are all related with the Supreme Lord Krishna through a loving relationship. This is complete knowledge. By performing loving devotional service to Krishna, we can be happy even while living in this material world. So those devotees who understand all these things clearly, they are situated properly, and those who don't understand this Krishna consciousness, they will always be bewildered and confused, and they will be struggling in this material world. So next what happens, we will be understanding in the next section. Hare Krishna.